So welcome everyone. Since the recording started, it's good to get back at the beginning to our irregularly timed meeting for Mathlib community. I'm glad everyone can make it. I think there's been a lot of changes in how things are done since the last instantiation of this event. And so I thought it'd be good as we start to open up the floor and talk about, in particular, the transition from a single, you know, batch of permissions inside of one repo to a fork-based pull request workflow. I recognize that hasn't been without its bumps, but also I've been incredibly appreciative and really impressed by the amount of assistance people gave other people inside the community to help keep things moving. And certainly we're not at a static point in that transition. We're still moving towards making sure that the process is as seamless, if not more seamless, for contributors with the new workflow compared to the last one. And for that, we really need people to point out all the places where there's still friction, there's still sharp edges, there are still things that could be improved in their mind. So with that, does anyone want to talk about their experience with the new PR-based workflow from Forks? Any comments, thoughts, suggestions, criticisms? Good time to.
So I think it's important to remember that even though there was a lot of noise that went on, for every person that made noise, there were 10 people that just quietly just did everything and everything worked fine. All my PhD students just migrated all their PRs to Forks, and it worked great, and they just didn't make any fuss. So that it was a lot more seamless than you might somehow imagine. I think that's all I wanted to say. There was some trouble, but a lot of it did work quite well.
Well, that's good to hear. You don't hear about. Generally, people don't complain if they had nothing to complain about. I would hope, but
right.
There's always that concern that you have this experience when you stand up in the front of class and you say something and no one responds, and you look at people's faces and it's very unclear whether they're not responding because of being pleased with what you said or being very displeased with what you said. And so, it's good to know both the successes, the things that work well, but also to identify the problems so that we can convert those into successes in the future.
Is there a quick summary for why now was the good time to make this switch?
Well, I think the bite-sized summary is that we were really straining at the seams of the previous model. I mean, we had over 500 people with write permissions. They came from, vastly different locations, vastly different backgrounds. It was difficult to completely ascertain, who is associated to a GitHub account. And it's just, not that anything in terms of an incident or anything like that precipitated this. There's nothing that we've seen, and we've looked hard, but nothing that we've seen that indicates that people were taking advantage of their permissions in some, malevolent way. But, it's much easier to manage and much easier to secure if we move to the fork-based model, the thing that everyone else basically uses for open source collaboration. And I recognize that there wasn't a lot of discussion outwardly facing about this move before it seemed to just drop out of the sky. But there was a lot of discussion preceding it try and get the infrastructure set up in the correct way. I mean, some of this is, you know, security and collegiality. A lot of these things are bound by people's imagination in terms of knowing what they can and cannot do. And so, we don't want to put ideas in people's minds about, what things are possible. It's similar with how it runs through a fork. You can go out and you can figure out what problems you have in a given fork-based workflow. But, I think in the end, people just, we got worried enough that we decided, despite the cost, despite the energy we had to invest in it. And I will say that, the FRO and the Mathlib community, I mean, they invested significant effort to make this happen, and it was it required a lot of changes internally to get things working, and a
Is
lot
that
of
a
time to
one-time
figure.
cost? Well, like, or are there higher ongoing costs, or is it just like you had to
Well,
get things into place
I,
once?
there were certainly big one-time costs to set up the CI correctly to make sure that we were addressing any concerns that people had, some worries that people had. And there's still the ongoing cost right now. As you've seen, CI has been broken and then unbroken and then broken again. There's certainly edge cases where it's not working like we'd want it, but hopefully those are very far out now. But it's still not, there are a lot of things that are not in their ideal form. And so that's an ongoing cost to manage this, is to get those things in the form where, contributing into this new workflow is even easier than contributing into the old workflow.
I'm curious if we look at a graph of new contributors, whether there's going to be an inflection point here now that we reduce this barrier to entry.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. From one line, you could say, yeah, people who are already experienced with this workflow, have worked other projects and contributed, and that's just, they don't think second, they don't think twice about that process. Will it make them more likely? Yeah, they're not necessarily going to show up on Zulip and ask for permission. On the other hand, a lot of the people that join the Mathlib community come without a background in any kind of software development to start with. So, we recognize that with the, big tent PR model that we had, we trained a lot of people to work one way and then had to fit them to train, shift their perspective and get them to do it another way. And that makes it extra hard when all you've known is one way and then you have to go and do something another way. Other people have thoughts, comments, experiences about the move? I mean, I think a good use of time, if anyone has anything to point out, is to point out particular things right now that they had an issue with or are still having an issue with involving the PR process, so that we can, get them on the radar and then address them.
I mean, I'll just say I have generally positive feelings about this. Moving towards a more standard workflow seems just good to me. So
It's good to hear. All right. Well, if you don't want to say them here, you're always free to say them on Zulip at some point, either directly or in a channel. Um, okay. All right. So one thing that we're going to miss is being able to tell what newcomers are planning to work on when they ask for permission. Perhaps we can recommend newcomers talk about it. Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea. What does the we've been working on the instructions on the Lean River Community GitHub page, GitHub.io page, the web page, to try and address the changes, but also make it more straightforward, reduce any kind of confusion with the process. And I think, did we include language about as to how to contribute link? Yeah. We do include language, at least on the web page. But again, if you've seen the thread about making a mathlib install DMG file, sorting through the web page to get to a line that's about 5 paragraphs down that tells you, let's see, let me read it. If you haven't already, please come to Zulip, introduce yourself, and mention new PR. Probably is not the most effective way to reach the majority of people who are thinking about contributing. And I'm curious if anybody has an idea about what would be more effective, if there's other channels that you can put this information in so that people can encounter it earlier in the process, get useful feedback about what their goals are, get a kind of a lay of the land to see if other people might be interested in collaborating on the results they want to work on. So I guess if I remember correctly, there's in the core repository, there's a STD. Do I say STD or do I say stood? I don't think I really want to say STD, but I defer to the people who own the thing. But there's a stood contributors guide in there, which is pretty thorough on GitHub itself. I don't know if people have found that effective in terms of communicating guidance for authoring PRs into stood or not. It'd be something that'd be good to know the impact of. But regardless, I don't think we have anything like that in our in the Mathlib repository.
So FLT has a contributing.md file. Maybe we should have one.
I mean, I'm not. It's very possible that we do, and I just am ignorant. That happens quite a bit. Let's see. So contributing dot, it's just in the root. There's a contributing.md is what you're telling me for FLT.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, we do not have such a thing. So I think that would be a very good idea to populate not just the instructions for the practicalities, but to convey these sentiments, like Rita said. Make sure that people come in, they interact with community early on, and can scope their projects appropriately to what exists and what there's support for and what there's interest in, and avoid having to come in and propose something for a PR that's been completed, and then having trouble figuring out if it fits the scope of Mathlib, or if we have the appropriate resources to actually review and maintain this particular part of mathematics. I'll put that down as a note here. So what's in the contributing.md for FLT?
It explains we run things via sort of GitHub tasks and projects. And so it explains where to look for things to, it explains exactly what we want contributed and how to find out what we want and where to find it.
All right. I'm just going to take a moment here and take a look at that. Okay. Yeah, I think this would be very good to have. And yep, we have also the contributing.md for core itself. Yeah, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Ah, thank you, Pietro. There's a link in the chat to it directly. So that's a good action item for things that we can do to try and improve the experience. It should be fairly maintainable too. Anyone else have any ideas about improving the experience for contributing generally, not necessarily related to the new or old workflow, but I know there was a lot of discussion about trying to create a one-click bundle or some low friction way to get working with Mathlib if you're a mathematician with very little experience using the associated tools necessary to develop Mathlib.
I think one thing that needs to be clear is whether you want a project depending on Mathlib or contribute to Mathlib itself. And in the discussion, to me, it seemed like what people really want is a project downstream of Mathlib and not something for contributing to Mathlib itself.
Okay. That's a good distinction. Yeah. I think there are improvements on the way for that, right? I think in the next release, thanks to work of Anna, there's going to be an improved Lake New math, my project, or whatever project name you give it. And that's going to come with, yeah, I have to look up exactly, but a lot of the benefits of Mathlib itself. But I'm happy to hear people remember better themselves exactly what's coming down the pike for that. And also look it up if you'll indulge me.
My impression was that if you want to work on Mathlib itself, then you probably have a higher complexity buy-in from the start anyways, because you need to learn Git to a degree to be able to contribute to Mathlib, and you also need to learn more about Mathlib itself and in general contributing to a large formalization project. Whereas my impression of the thread was, yeah, what most people really want to be easy is, I want to start my own formalization project that is using Mathlib. The example was Mathematica, I believe, for comparison.
So comparison, what aspect of interacting with Mathematica were they comparing it to? Just like I can click on this, pay a fee, and then do something, or
Yeah, I think the desire is just you install the tool with an installer, and it gives you the editor, it gives you the extension, it gives you elan and all of the dependencies that we have for Lean, like Git, for example. And it also gives you a project to work with that you can immediately work in. So you don't even need to set up the project that you have to use. And then you can just work on that. That's what I understood from the thread.
and what would be the entry point where people start? Because even I think we've all decided that if someone doesn't know what editor they're going to use, they're going to use VS Code to start with. And
Yep.
to me, the most sensible path was you start with VS Code and then try and put stuff everything into there so that it makes it easy to get all the things that you said.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what we do right now, right? I think we could still simplify the setup guide a bit, so that it's easier to use, because as people pointed out in the thread, having to manually install dependencies using the terminal and then also installing elan separately is kind of painful for people who have never used the terminal before.
Mhm.
And I will look into improving this next quarter, but I think some people want this to be even simpler than
Yeah.
having to install VS Code and then having to go through the setup guide. They just want an installer that runs, sets it all up for them, even the project, and then they can just use Lean and work on the project without having to care about Lake, without having to care about the terminal, any complicated installation procedures.
Yeah, that'd be really nice. I agree, but also it's very hard.
Yeah.
When I was at Big Proof, someone who works in Rock showed me the fact that their extension runs in WebAssembly, a full copy of the language itself. And so you could just, get to the GitHub page, push period, open up this shell. That shell's a bad word. This, this basic text editor web interface, VS Code. But then if you pulled in the extension for Rock, you could actually do something with it because it ran in the browser.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah, there are lots of technical challenges for this in Lean,
yeah.
I think. So we would have to overcome first. And some of the limitations of WebAssembly will also make this will make it very difficult to scale this properly to the size of Mathlib, I think.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's Mathlib is the main blocking factor in trying to stuff it all inside, the browser. And we're trying to think about how can we disentangle the mathematical dependencies of certain areas in different ways, right? You saw a couple months ago the unbundling of the ordered algebra hierarchy, so that you need order data, algebra data, and then the mixins, some prop value mixins on top of them to talk about how they relate to each other. But in theory, that kind of thing should also allow yourself to streamline the dependency graph for these, so that, you know, if I'm a mathematician, I have a field that I'm interested in, I want to develop project in that area. I don't have to yank all of Mathlib down to do that. But it's also a hard problem too. Right. And so Kevin comments that FRO instructions can get you up and running with Mathlib from scratch without having to use the command line.
I think at the moment you still need to install Git using the command line.
Oh, yeah.
At least
yeah.
if you're on Linux or macOS. But I want to fix that next quarter.
Oh, that sounds great. Let's see. Oh, and Pietro mentions a pull request template that incorporates questions. Ours is, I mean, I think that's a great idea. Ours is, it's already very long in my mind, the template, if you've interacted with it recently. After a while, you kind of forget everything below the comment line and just sort of write down what you've done and move along. Or like many people, just push enter and continue with the submission process. But I don't see why we couldn't have something like, links or a checklist or something where, you hopefully catch the eye of someone who's submitting their first PR when they go through the process and they say, oh, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. Maybe beneficial to start with it. Okay, a task list within it. Do we have a model for a task list that you were thinking of? Is there some place you can point to? The only one I really remember is the FRO one, and I haven't done that in a while. So to catch people up who might have just joined about halfway through, we're talking about improving the contribution process generally. We talked a bit about the CI change, but right now, we're brainstorming generally about changes we can make to help streamline, improve, make just more pleasant the process of contributing. So one of the things that we don't have is we don't have a contributing.md file in the root of our repository to talk about contribution guidelines. I looked, I didn't see one, so maybe I'm mistaken, but and then now we're talking about the pull request template. Maybe changes
Didn't we
to
have a contribution guideline or contributing.md in Mathlib 3? Oh,
that one. Did we not?
Let me find out.
If we did, we just copy it over, I guess, right? It'd be not the
No.
worst thing to start.
You're right. We don't.
No? Okay.
Interesting.
So that seems like it's low-hanging fruit, where to try to put something together. And one of the comments that was made earlier was, it's really nice when people. One of the benefits about the previous PR workflow was that people had to come in, they had to talk about what they were doing. Other people would chime in and say, hey, I'm interested in this too, or I've already have work in this direction. People could collaborate. They could, check on how to scope their focus, change it if they need, so that no one's, left hanging once the PR comes in. The expectations are set a bit better, and people have a more, they're more tightly integrated into the community from the start. And so when people aren't forced to come and ask for permission, at least for the first time, it makes it more likely that they will sort of be disengaged to begin with, and maybe not benefit from the feedback they would get if it happened the other way. Yeah, so I mean, Bolton suggests just copying over the contribute index file for the web page into contributing.md to start with. I mean, I think that'd be a good start, but it's also an opportunity to try and think about exactly what we want to say, given the changes we've made and the experience we have. And then we could link to that in the template for the PR too, so that you say, hey, have you looked at the contributing guidelines? Have you done these things? Make it a checklist so that people have to actually, opt in to saying that they've done these things. I mean, ideally though, you wanna advertise the opportunity to come and talk on Zulip about what you're interested in early on, right? Because the process, when you sat down, you started making the PR, a lot of stuff has probably already happened that would have benefited from the the input of the community, the support of the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could still be a thing in the PR template, is that you just for first time or new contributors, you should discuss your PR on Zulip before you open it to make sure that it's a good approach or it's something we want or things like this.
I think I mean there's still a little bit of difference between first-time contributors and non-first-time contributors, in that we have to opt into running CI for their PRs on a first-time contributor. So you have to go click a button that says, do you trust this person or whatever, and then run the CI for that. So there is still a little bit of a threshold that people have to cross, where at least you can, try and encourage people to have done that step before we can hit the play button on the CI workflow. But these are very good ideas. It's good to have concrete, actionable things come out of this meeting. Well, that makes me very happy. Does anyone else have any other thoughts about improving the experience for contributing? I mean, of course, one big thing is plowing through the queue more effectively. That's also a hard problem, like some of these other things we've talked about. Let's see. I know that other repositories highlight first-time contributors in some type of release notes or some regularly occurring communication, whether it's on a blog or in a in a mailing list. Do we have anything to collect? Like, I know we have first-time contributor or new contributor or some label for PRs that gets automatically applied. But I wonder if there's a way to collect all the merged new contributor PRs, gather, using GitHub API, put it together into something, and then stick it either in the Mathlib announcements that that Floris put up to start, try and give another venue for sharing what's going on in Mathlib. and do that like every, I mean, you could even have, that could almost be automated, right? Some cron job that says, okay, you hit GH with some appropriate fields, pull back a JSON, format it, and then push it to Zulip. Ooh, here's something. All contributors CLI. Ooh, perfect. So in the chat, actually has linked to it's very pretty. We'll have to explore that too. Let me put it in my notes. Cool, thank you. Anyone have any other thoughts along the contribution workflow more broadly in that area? I think these are all very good ideas, so it makes me happy. Maybe we can open up the floor and see if there's anything people want to talk about, any particular topic, subject, PR even. I think if I were to highlight anything, I'd follow again what Flores has started is these Mathlib announcements with the new generalized rewrite tactic, GRW. I think that's a wonderful contribution. And it'd be really nice to be able to support development of tooling like that. I know it takes a lot of work to get to point to develop something like that, and then also a good amount of work to get into Mathlib because you want to make sure that it's maintainable and fits with the plans moving in the future. And one of the things I did talk about with people at Big Group was that there's a lot of people interested in mathematics in the Mathlib community, but the depth of knowledge for, say, tactic development or metaprogramming generally wasn't as substantial. It'd be really great if we could organically grow those skills. Because I know there are people out there that, they get bitten by the programming bug from becoming a Mathlib contributor. They get deeper and deeper into the actual workings of the language itself. This is what interests them. How do you take that interest? How do you take that energy and convert it into, greater skill, motivation, focus, a concrete result?
Sorry, I missed the last question. Can you repeat it?
So how can we help support and grow the community's collective knowledge and skill in tactic writing or metaprogramming generally. I mean, just for saying review purposes, this would be a really nice
I think once we
addition.
can solve that problem for maintainers, we can solve it for the rest of the community.
Yeah. Well, but the maintainers have got to come from somewhere, right? They can't.
Well, I know, but what I mean is, like even taking the subset of maintainers that, including myself, are not particularly skilled at metaprogramming or tactic writing. Like if we can bring ourselves as a group to this level, that would help us to learn how to bring other people into that realm too, you know.
My semi-serious, semi-facetious idea was to find a very nice conference location and then book it for 2 weeks. But the 2-week focus would bring together the people who are experts on the metaprogramming with people who had the skills to really up their metaprogramming abilities, but also then like another group of people that had concrete goals, like, oh, it's really difficult to translate between this structure and this structure. They're closely related. We want to try and auto-generate stuff. Like just, we need to build better driving handlers for simple-ish structures, right? And then you could have an event that was a mixture of the, sort of general lectures on finer points, but also, some working groups that would get together with mixed abilities and focus on solving particular problems that people had. And so you could learn through experience in this way.
I mean, I think this is a great idea. This is something you could propose as an iSerm workshop.
No. Is iSerm nice enough to get people? I mean, it's very nice. iSerm is a great place. Going there a couple months ago, it was a very, very good experience.
Is
But,
it nice enough for what?
Oh, so this is the facetious part of it, was that I was thinking back to these. So Simon's Foundation used to have the Simon Symposia, and they held them in at a resort in the Caribbean, right? But you could also go the other way. There was Ivan Cheltsov is very well known for organizing conferences in interesting locations, like Easter Island, or there was an island off the coast of Norway where they went, and everyone had to be given a rifle just to protect themselves from the bears.
I mean, one appealing thing about iSerm is that it's actually, being in the Northeast, it's kind of midway between the US and Europe in some sense. It's in the US, obviously, but like for most of the US, sort of halfway between.
I did just get an email again from BAMP. I remember we had that cohomology workshop a few years ago, and they have satellite locations, not just up in Canada, but also like in in Granada, I think, in Spain. I think people would go to that. I think my parents got married or had their honeymoon in Mallorca. I guess that can be another action item.
I mean, I think a conference would be ideal. But I wonder if we could even do this. If there's a way to do this virtually where people like pair up or get into small groups. I mean, it would have to be like coordinated so that it's organized on a, I don't know, bi-weekly basis for like 10 weeks or something. But I wonder if it could be accomplished this way too.
So sort of virtual working groups.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason I would be suggesting it is because, you know, if you are going to have it in a physical location, a lot of times it's going to be like a year before that's actually going to take place. And so it's just going to be a while.
Yeah.
But
I mean, do we have a list somewhere of like? It'd be really nice if this metaprogramming task was actually accomplished. Like I mentioned, the deriving handler. I know this comes up all the time on Zulip, but I don't know if we collect them anywhere.
there's this thread, the missing tactics list. And I think there might even be a GitHub issue for it now. Not sure.
Okay, that's good.
And if you talk to the right people, they might have a lot more. There you go. Bolton has it in the chat.
Ah,
If you
perfect.
talk to Heather, it's possible she's got another 30 tactics that she wants written. So,
Well, she's been proactive from what I've heard, and that
Oh, yeah,
she
for sure.
organized her own, own group of people to get person power behind solving these questions to build capacity.
oh, for sure, she definitely has.
Oh man, I have so many. Okay, there we go. Ah, perfect. Oh wow, yeah, that's great. So I guess what we need to do then with a list like this is to try and trim it down to things that are we think are feasible, right? That'll require someone who knows what they're doing to kind of look at it and say, okay, I see a path forward here about what we need to do. But I can't really do it myself but I can direct someone or I can help them, work on that task.
Here, let me provide another comment on this list. I think it would be good if maybe some of this list could be broken out into separate GitHub issues, and maybe there could be some kind of mechanism along the lines of what you're saying about, like trying to assess the difficulty of how low hanging fruit are these things separately, because I think it's maybe a good way of documenting things so that people can peruse the ideas that others have had and find things to work on. So yeah, I definitely think that more sort of documentation and organizing of things like this list of missing tactics could be done.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, I remember when we were porting, Mario had the list of all the tactics that needed to be ported, and he just went through and he marked them as like, this is going to be trivial, or this is going to be a little bit of work. And some of them were, of course, very, very hard and had to be completely rewritten or something like this. Someone with the necessary expertise could just go through that issue and just edit it to mark which things they expect to be easy or hard.
Yeah, as I recall, it was like a ski notation. It was like a black diamond, blue square. It had like particular notation for which ones were hard or easy. So yeah, something like that. If something like that could be done for this list, I feel that would be pretty useful.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent thing to keep in mind.
I also think it would be good. Part of the reason I think it would be good to split this out into separate issues is I feel that, maybe we could be taking more advantage of the GitHub issue system and how people can sort of upvote or downvote particular issues. Like it would be good to get a sense of, how many people agree that a particular tactic would be very useful for them. And so you can do, you can go to issues, and I think you can sort by reactions. You can sort by thumbs up reactions, for example, and you can see some of the top things that people are interested in, and that might be something that would be like helpful to like assess what is on the sort of Pareto frontier of easy to accomplish and also useful.
Yeah, I mean, but looking at that list, there's a lot of things there, right? So I don't know if you know, maybe the answer in the end is just to make
Yeah,
a
I mean,
one to one.
part of the reason I don't do this myself is because I think if I were to split all this out myself, then I would probably be responsible at that point for half of the open issues on the repository. And like, I don't necessarily know. I think that's that's maybe a downside, is that do we really want to spam the issues list with all of this? I don't know. I think an advantage of the issues list is that you can filter for the types of issues you want. So if we put the meta tag on all of these tactic issues, then people can filter that out if they want. But it is sort of maybe an instance of a lot of talk without a lot of like code behind it, right?
Yeah. I gotta imagine there's existing, like, people build software companies on top of this type of question, right? To help manage issues within large workflow organizations, be able to track and communicate about them. Something beyond GitHub issues itself. Although with these kinds of things, I also hear people complain generally about things that exist in that range. And I have very little experience being a mathematician by training. But I wonder if there's some, nice enhancements you could do to GitHub issues that would get this functionality for you without having to manually or even in an automated fashion split up this list into a bunch of singletons and spread it out over all of the issues. That's good. That's another very concrete action item we can take from this meeting. Okay, well, we're running up against the hour. So maybe again, I'll turn it over to the people who are here if they want to bring anything up in the last few minutes. Have any comments, questions, concerns, anything they want to share? All right, well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. This has been really productive. So I'll look for you in about 2 months at the next meeting. In the meantime, I'll see you on Zulip, on GitHub and elsewhere where we have to conduct our business. All right. Goodbye. Take care, everyone.